This is episode 13 of the Hybrid Coaching Podcast. In this episode, JK and I will review the new HYROX major locations and the qualifying system that was released this past week. In addition, we're going to talk about pull-ups, how to use them, when to kip, when to butterfly, when to do strict. We hope you enjoy this episode. Let's make hybrid fitness work for you.
Yeah.
All right. Man, it's a good microphone. Picks up a lot of stuff.
Oh, man. Sorry.
All right. So we'll try this again. Welcome to episode 13 of the Hybrid Coaching Podcast with myself, Anthony Parasini, and James Kelly. Today, we're going to go a little bit over about the majors and the qualification systems for HYROX, as well as maybe a little backtracking on JK's Sydney race and coming up to Brisbane. As well, we're going to get into some pull-ups, how and when to use them, when do you kip, when do you do strict, and should you even learn how to kip or butterfly your pull-ups? So, to start with, JK, how you doing today?
Very well, thank you, Anthony. First of all, I'm glad that you said Brisbane, not Brisbane. So great start, mate.
Yeah, you told me last time. Brisbane.
Brisbane. Brisbane, mate. No, I'm very well, thank you. Very excited that the majors and the new Elite 15 structure has been announced, and ready to get after it.
Yeah, pretty excited. Looking at the Elite 15 structure, we'll go over the major locations first because those are pretty quick. So we start with Amsterdam, then we go to Hong Kong, then the new year turns over and we get to go to fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada before hitting up Glasgow. And if anybody needs to go to the LCQ, that's going to be in Barcelona.
Have they announced the date of Barcelona yet?
Yes. April, I believe, 25th or 26th is the dates for Barcelona. And a lot of people may not have seen it because I believe it said on a Saturday. But if you, I believe it's the April 26th, looking at the calendar I just pulled up. The reason being is they announced it to HYROX Spain first. So you had to have been part of that in order to see it.
Right, okay. Which obviously, April, okay. The Worlds, I'm assuming, will be the first or second week of June. It gives everyone, it gives the 15 athletes men and women that end up getting the slots about 6 to 7 weeks before Worlds, right?
Yeah, probably about 5 to 6 weeks, I would think. Because it's the last weekend of April is when the LCQ is, and then we're assuming it's the first weekend of June. But I mean, Worlds in the past, history has shown us, Worlds has been anywhere from the middle of May to the beginning of June. So there's probably actually a 3-week window when Worlds could be. And I'm not sure it's even set yet. I don't know if you've listened to some interviews with Mo and Christian. But as far as I know, they don't have an actual location yet. They have 3 cities that they're talking to, but nothing firmed up. And once they get it firmed up, I'm sure they'll announce it in due time after that.
So how do you feel about, the first major this year is slightly earlier than previous. It's going to be a long season. How do you feel about that?
So basically from Worlds to the very first major is 4 months, which means you got an 8-month season if you go from the first date until the last date. But athletes aren't going to just show up right to the very first one. There's going to be at a minimum 6 weeks before that they need to open up their season. So that extends it by another month and a half. So you're looking at about 9.5 to a 10-month season now for these athletes, which I just think is a little too long. I think it should be shortened. Maybe we should take it down to 3 majors or 4 majors all on after the new year, but sandwiched between the new year and the the June date. That would follow actually competition seasons such as gymnastics, which follow a similar structure that start after the new year. It would still have people training. You could still do all the mass participation events. You can still have people trying to go get their qualifying times that need to get their times to get into the majors. They could try to do that all over the fall. And then you have the actual like season structure happening January to June, which I think would be a good setup. But I really like what HYROX has done. I like their setup. I like the major locations this year. I'm very biased. I think there should be a major or world championship in Las Vegas every single year, though. So I think it's just an easy spot for everyone to get to all over the world. Cheap flights and everything, lots of hotel rooms, so you wouldn't run into a bunch of issues. Easy place to travel. But yeah,
uh, it'll be interesting, like from my end, obviously, uh, being in the Elite 15, it'll be interesting to see who ends up racing that first major. I personally think like if you want to take your fitness and your HYROX seriously, you can't not um, accept an invitation these days. Like you've got to go.
yeah,
That and look, that's my opinion. Not, and I'm sure there's athletes that would be totally different, but it'll just be interesting because, as you said, mate, that Amsterdam race is only 3.5 months away.
yeah,
It's actually just around the corner. So yeah, it'll just be interesting to see if anyone doesn't that's in the 15, male and female. If they don't show.
so we can get into the qualifications too. But like you just said 3.5 months. Amsterdam's 10.5 weeks away. It's 2.5 months.
2.5 months.
Yeah, it's not like it's coming up quick. So
Very quickly.
you get, I mean, we're gonna get right into it. Just
Yeah,
looking at
yeah.
this, first I want to say congratulations on your automatic qualifier. You get podium at World Championships, became an automatic qualifier. So third place, awesome job. Not even needing a roll down. You are into all the majors. So you are in the wonderful, luxurious position of planning your season and not having to worry about going to extra races to get that qualifier, even though you just did an extra race and that time, even though not your best time or even one you'd prefer, it's not your best 3 or 4 times. It is actually would have qualified you still. So
Yeah.
sitting pretty there to have that, but congratulations on that. So I'm looking at the list right now of the auto qualifiers, and you said you don't think everybody's
Yeah.
going to show up. So just going over the auto qualifiers, the ones that I think would actually show up to Amsterdam, we'll start at the top of their list and work our way down. Hunter, I don't think he's going to be there. Alex, I would say he's definitely going to be there. Ryan Kent, I've heard he's not going to be there. Michael Sandbach, I don't expect him to be there. Dylan Scott, I think would show up. You're going to show up, and I'm assuming Paleo will. So out of the 7, I think 3 of them won't be there. So I think only 4 of them will accept.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. That's exactly what I was going to say. Look, who knows? But which means obviously that there could potentially be 2 or 3 roll downs, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I would expect 3 roll downs, and right now those people sitting, and there might be more than that, but the 3 people sitting in 16 to 18th, Tim, Yannick, and Tobias, I don't think Tobias will show up, which means Eugenio would get the roll down at this
Right.
current stage.
Mm.
And that's just looking right there. And I also expect, I don't think Rylan Shadeg, who is currently sitting in ninth on the leaderboard, um, I don't know if he'll go. He's having health issues, so maybe he drops out,
Right.
and even Graham Holiday gets the roll down
That's
to
the
that first
slot.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. Yeah, I personally like I personally think it's um I'm personally excited that there is a major this soon. But that's just my own due to what I'm doing and what we're doing, Anthony. It'll just be interesting. What I'm interested in is that first major versus um the last major and how it'll be different in terms of who's racing in is that the Glasgow one will be the last major.
Glasgow is the last one. Yep. And
Yeah.
I agree. The difference between them is going to be it's going to be pretty stark because what's going to happen is this first major is I would say the usual suspects are the ones that are going to go get a qualifying time because honestly, looking at like the spreads of the field, there's not 15 athletes that are going to be able to get their qualifier in the men's and women's field in that first major. I'd say, there's probably 5 or 6 athletes that might be actually competing for the qualifying spot on the women's side. And
Yep.
I would say there's probably maybe even less than that, maybe only 5, maybe even only 4
Okay.
athletes that are qualifying for those top 3 spots on the men's side.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, and so your take on the women's then, right? Do you think most of the women 15 as it stands today will show to the first major?
I don't see I see one person on the list that I think won't accept their invite to that first major, and that's just because of injury. And I think that's Rebecca Mason.
Yes.
And
Okay.
she's sitting in 15th. I think every single other one of those women is going to take their spot. And actually, I, between my wife and I, we coach 7 of them. So I know that they're going to take their spots.
Yeah.
And so I don't see the opportunity on the women's side for a lot of roll down.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's again also interesting to see the difference between the male field versus the women field and how different let's just say like the females operate and go about the season versus the males, I'm not that's not a criticism towards either. It's just it, there has been a different in the past as well,
Yeah.
right? Like
Last year, I
um
mean, you had big roll downs all the way down to like 26th or 27th place on the men's side in some of these
yeah,
majors. And the women, actually, I think one of the majors got rolled down to 29th, but that's just, I think that was ability to reach it. And I also think the roll downs will happen later in the season because some people will get their qualifier, especially in the second major, where it's like, okay, the top 3, they got their qualifiers. A lot of people think that they're in that 4 to 6 range. And so they're
yeah,
going to attend that second major with a lot of intention. But that second major is in Hong Kong. So a
which
lot of people, especially the Europeans, and I think a lot of the East Coast Americans are going to be like, well, I don't want to travel that far. It's going to affect me. I'll just wait for Vegas or Glasgow where I can get 7th to ninth
hmm,
place because
yeah,
unlike last year, the roll downs that happen, there are 3 qualifying spots on the men's and women's side at every single major. There is no
major, yeah,
cutoff for 5th place. You can take if it works out this way, there could be somebody in the 4th major at Glasgow who, if all the previous 9 people that have already qualified show up, they could take 12th place and qualify for Worlds.
And qualify.
So
Yeah, yeah.
you could literally have a blow up race and qualify for Worlds.
What's your take on that? Like, do you
I
agree with
actually
it?
so I really liked last year's cutoff at 5th place because that meant every single person, and it happened this way, every single person that qualified for the World Championships was a racer who had
Yeah,
placed, I think on the men's side had placed in the women's side, you had to have placed top 5 in any single race. And on the men's side,
yeah,
because it was so different every time, every single qualifier had been top 4 at a race. They never got
yeah,
to that 5th
yeah.
spot. So I think it was really impressive. And I would like to see that continue, even if that means they add an
Mm,
extra LCQ.
yeah, yeah. Because again, the LCQ this year coming up, there's 3 spots up for grabs, no matter what.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
LCQ is going to have
So,
3 spots. If you had done it the same way and only had one LCQ, and say the women's ended up exactly the same, the minimum people you could have would be 5 if the same 5 people placed top 5 in every single major. And it had the same rules as last year. That means that the
mm,
LCQ would have taken 10 people, or if they had split it, it
yeah,
would have been 5 and 5, which still means you have to place top 5 in an event, which I do
yeah,
like over anybody being 12th place. Now,
yeah, yeah,
additionally, I do really, really like that they defined, because every single year it's happened, people drop out of the world championships due to injury, inability to make it, travel, whatever it is. Somebody can't do it, sickness, illness. Uh, so they defined that finally the person at the LCQ is the person that will take the world championship spot. That is fantastic. You know, that person within the last 5 to 6 weeks
yep,
of world championships will have raced and been fit.
yep,
It gives people purpose as well. If like you go to the world championships, for example, in yours LCQ this last year, a lot of people were like, go for broke, go for first or nothing, like let yourself blow up. Well, now there's a reason to like take second, you know? There's a reason to
absolutely.
keep fighting. A lot of people said that others gave up. I just don't believe that. But absolutely, there is now a reason to fight for those positions.
Yeah, yeah. Overall, mate, I, and look, like I know there's always people's different opinion and there's always areas to improve on things such as like a qualification system. Right? But from my end, like I heard it, I got the email, and like from an athlete point of view, I'm like, all right, cool, this is what it is. I'm playing their game. Let's go. Like I personally think it's a great step up. Um, and not only that, sorry, I'm more talking about the step up on how to qualify. And if you don't know how to qualify for the 15, they're taking your average or your average time of your 2 best times now, not just one time. And
Yep.
that's what I'm saying. Like of course, yes, I'm very lucky and privileged to have an auto qualifier. Um, but um, but in terms of the whole structure now, I'm excited. I personally think it is definitely a step up from last year. And from my end, it's all right. Well, if you want to take this seriously, you just got to play their game now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. Taking the average. I know it's more stress on some of the athletes trying to break in because it's hard to break in on the time qualifier. But looking at it, you know, taking the average is the right thing to do.
Mm.
You have like a lot of good athletes with good times, and they consistently can perform that. And then you have something like, and I don't want to harp on it, but the Berlin course, you know, appeared to be about 3 minutes faster. And this
Yeah.
kind of alleviates the pressure that put on, because now those guys that got 56, 57 low on that course aren't automatically in. They have to back that performance up. And if
Yeah,
they can do that, then great, they should be in.
yeah,
I really like that setup. It is really tough, I believe, for the North American athletes, the schedule this year, just because there's no opportunity to race before that first major. Um,
yeah.
Amsterdam, the only North American race is Toronto. It's the weekend before Amsterdam, which means it won't count towards Amsterdam. Uh,
Right.
and then Hong Kong, the only race we would have here in North America would be Toronto because Chicago is the weekend before Hong Kong and Dallas is the weekend of Hong Kong. So we don't have any opportunity to race before the first two majors, essentially. And Anaheim is in December, which is after. So uh, really, it kind of is rough for the American racers that aren't automatically qualified or that already have their times because they would have to travel far to be able to set one up. But I still really like how it's set up. And if we didn't mention, it's a 365-day rolling calendar. So
Yeah,
your two best times within the last year are the only ones that count. Uh,
yeah,
Along that too, one thing that I like that they changed is they are not giving auto qualifiers at the majors this year to people that finish in the top five or the top three with roll down, which means that by the last major, you'll still have people time qualifying for it instead of like the men's side that had 14 auto qualifiers for the final race. Um, and
yeah. Right.
the only way to get an additional auto qualifier is if you win a major and you are not already auto qualified. So, which last year, I mean, I don't see that happening. Dylan won one, but it was the last one, so he doesn't get an auto qualifier to anymore. Um,
Mm.
but the guys that won the first three majors, you're looking at Kent and Hunter and Alex had already had auto qualifiers from the year before.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I agree with you. I think that's definitely a good thing. Um, yeah, like yeah. Again, Anthony, there's so much talk and speculation on this, and but as I just stated, it is what it is now. And if you're an athlete listening to this who, you know, are trying to crack into that 15 or in the 15 or you know, are just hungry to try to get there, then it is what it is. And the only thing that you should be focusing on now is to get fitter, faster, stronger,
Yep.
you know?
And actually, I'm glad you brought that up. If you're an athlete and you're trying to break into this 15, this is actually a really good opportunity for you. You should put on blinders and ignore the first two majors. If you're an athlete that's not already have the times to qualify you, you need to go out and race for time. So you get to go time trial pro courses at a couple different venues, and you really should be doing that to find your qualifiers because you really don't have any option to get into those first two uh, if you're not already in them.
Yeah, absolutely. So
So,
you should be
which,
potentially having a look at, courses or
yeah,
events in October, November, December.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they absolutely should. And the reason is like it's better for them anyway because your first time getting on that grid course and in a major, it's not going to go exactly the way you want it to. You're going to have to get a feel for that course. And so that is actually helpful. You can put blinders on, you can train and actually like go into just like training mode, get yourself ready, incubated to come out and be prepared for Las Vegas if you can get there. And the good thing is that Las Vegas most likely is going to roll down to ninth place. So you still don't have to perform
Yeah.
top five. You could have a not perfect race and get your qualifier. And then say
Mm.
you don't get it in Vegas or you still don't have your qualifier yet, you get a couple extra months to keep training for that time. You get to go to Glasgow where all you got to do is top 12. And every single one of
Mm.
the men's race last year, at least one, sometimes two people dropped out, which means only 13 people finished. And you're telling me
Yeah.
the top 12, all you got to do is finish the race ahead of one person? Like, you know what? Maybe you should focus on that and the
Mm.
LCQ versus these first two. Like, you get
Yeah.
to drastically shorten your season. You get like basically to live the dream.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
I like it. I like it.
that should wrap up our talk for the majors and everything. Overall, I think absolutely great improvement from last year. And I really like seeing how HYROX, especially, they improve every year. They make tweaks, they listen to input, and it is a good system that's ever evolving. And consistency with the system is important, but they do make positive direction tweaks.
Correct. Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, exactly
yeah.
right.
So let's get into just real quick, JK, you for a minute. You have Brisbane coming up.
Brisbane. Brisbane.
Brisbane.
Yeah.
What is that from today? 10 days from now? No, 16
No,
days. 2 weeks.
16 days. Yeah, 2 weeks and a little bit. Yeah, yeah. So I'm excited for that. Obviously just had Sydney on the weekend, which is a great run. Um ended up ended up doing a 57 high. And look, like, you know, I'm
What'd you do in Sydney last year?
I did a 59, 59:19, I'm pretty sure. Um, yeah, the Sydney race was great, mate. As you know, Anthony, it was not a, like a serious race. I would call it for myself. It was really good to get out there and be a part of the actual HYROX community here and to race. And yeah, I ended up running well. And now that we know the majors and then obviously Brisbane coming up, we can kind of dial in, let's just say, a little bit more specific um, specific work, and then obviously get stuck into that Brisbane race and then get ready for that Amsterdam race.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds good. And just looking ahead, that's exactly, I believe, your plan, right? Is you're going Brisbane, and then you're going to have about I believe it's 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 8 weeks from Brisbane until Amsterdam, which means there's your build. Uh, Excited to
Exactly
get
right.
into that with you. So, topic of today, we're going to talk about pull-ups. What kind of pull-ups do you do? When should you do pull-ups? What's the purpose of kipping and or butterfly pull-ups? And am I just going to dislocate my shoulders doing them? So I'd actually be very interested in your take on this because I'll tell you mine coming from a CrossFit background, but just before I get into that, what do you got for pull-ups?
Um, like I personally think, I think the first thing that I would say about pull-ups is I think people have to be okay scaling, um, to be able to hit repetitions to get the benefit of, like volume, right? And what I mean by that is if you're a person that, let's just say, can only do one pull up at a time, right? That's okay. That's fantastic if you have a non-assisted pull up. The biggest thing to understand there is like, well, in workouts, depending on the stimulus that you need to hit, it is so okay and definitely needed to use a resistant band. And where I'm going here is like, I think a lot of athletes need to dilute their, let's just call it ego, and be okay with using bands. I remember when I used to train Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I was doing an F45 competition where they had strict pull-ups. The way I actually got better at strict pull-ups, knowing that I could do probably 15 at a time, but if I wanted to exceed um my volume or the way I could do that, I was actually using a lot of band work. I was actually using a lot of band work for the purpose of getting reps in and volume in a little bit lighter, if that makes sense. So that's pretty much my first take on it, Anthony. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, so I definitely think the first thing you should do is work on your first pull-up. So getting it strict, not trying to get there, like jump up, do some negatives, use bands, do ring rows, a lot of
Mm,
different ability to build the structure and to build that your shoulders and your sockets there, just that whole girdle, right? So
yeah,
and to learn like scap retraction and how to hold the bar and everything. Um, Kipping pull-ups have their place, as well as butterfly, and so do strict pull-ups. Strict pull-ups, in my view, are for building strength, building hypertrophy, muscle recruitment, all that kind of stuff. You can add weight to them. I think they're exceptional for that and just an upper body pulling movement. I definitely think it is worth the time to develop the skill of a kipping pull-up. Yes, a kipping pull-up makes a pull-up
yeah,
easier. It makes it about 70% of an actual pull-up in terms of weight. There's more stresses, more dynamic stresses on your shoulders, which help your ligaments, but they need to be at a certain level of strength at that point before you uh, attempt them, right? So you need to be able to do your strict pull-ups. And usually I say try to get 5 strict pull-ups. If you can do 5 strict pull-ups, then you can probably do about 10 to 12 kipping pull-ups in one set. So we'll start working on your kip. Uh, Kipping pull-ups are fantastic for GPP work and also getting the volume in. GPP is general physical preparedness. So when we do a workout or a circuit type workout that is multiple rounds and you have, 15 to 20 pull-ups at a time, and you're not going to do those all strict. But if you are able to kip or butterfly, you can actually keep your heart rate up, still get a great pulling movement out of it, as well as some coordination involved when you're doing kipping and butterfly. So it works a lot of like different nervous systems. It works your muscle structure. I'm a big proponent in believing that you definitely should learn how to kip and or butterfly for workouts and just for general volume because you can build general volume in it. Now, scaling, yes, you should have your strict pull-ups. Yes, you should scale down to ring rows. You should scale down to bent over rows, different upper body pulls, or just jumping pull-ups and negatives. If you can't kip, but you can do strict, but you can't do too many kipping or you're unable to kip, the best way to keep your heart rate up, which is usually the intention in a GPP workout, is going to be to do jumping pull-ups, but like extended jumping pull-ups. So jump and pull. So you have that little assistance, right? I absolutely believe though that the time it takes to develop a good kip and a good butterfly are worth it in the long run and can only help your fitness when you're doing it properly. Get your strict pull up first and then develop the kip and butterfly for it.
So, like Anthony, why is the pull up as a movement so important? And let's just be specific for a HYROX racer or a HYROX athlete.
So, one of the number one things everybody should have, no matter what sport you are, is proprioception. That's the awareness of your body in space. So, you need to know how to move your body all over. So, for a HYROX racer in particular, you have pulling movements. You have your sled pull. You have your ski erg. You have to maintain shoulder structure and you will farmer carry better if you know how to retract your scapulas. So you definitely need to have pulling in some sort in your repertoire for a HYROX. Not to mention, it is a lat workout. Lats are involved a lot in any sort of arm movement, whether you're pushing or pulling. You use your lats a lot when you bench press. And if you aren't using your lats when you're bench pressing, you are doing it wrong. So you need to engage them every single time. And that helps on your rowing, which is also another pulling movement. It helps on your burpees. It helps on the sled push. So just looking at that, the essential muscle groups of a pull-up are going to address your ski erg. They're going to address your sled push, your sled pull, your burpees, your rowing, and your farmer carry, right? And on the wall balls, you want to engage your lats to throw that push up. So there's the seventh one. And if you really want to hold that sandbag properly up there, there's your eighth one. So there is no reason anybody doing HYROX races should not be doing pretty much high volume of pull-ups, and you're not going to be able
Yeah.
to do them all strict.
Yeah. And I think the message there, right, is like pull-ups, the pulling movement, um, isn't necessarily just for the sled pull or the farmer's carry. You're actually really trying to strengthen those lats, your posterior, so that you're in a better position and you're stronger. Say, for instance, in that wall ball position, in that, and like again, Anthony, I'll throw you a question: is pull-ups a a movement that is going to benefit your posture whilst running?
Yeah. I mean, adding it in again, there's your back erectors, which need to remain tight, especially doing kipping and butterfly pull-ups. So there's really no reason if you want essential movements for HYROX, things that you should be doing all the time, obviously running, and you should be doing pull-ups. You should be doing high volumes of pull-ups. You should be doing various range of motions. So not just chin over bar pull-ups. You should be doing static holds. You should be doing uh descents or negatives. You should be doing kipping and butterfly. There's so much. You should be doing chest to bar pull-ups to extend that range of motion. And eventually, what's really cool is you get explosive at pull-ups. You can do clapping pull-ups and have a little bit of fun with it. And eventually, you'll be able
Wow.
to do bar muscle ups.
Can you do clapping pull-ups?
I can, but not too many.
Not too many.
Um,
Yeah, I actually haven't. You haven't programmed me any of them, mate.
Well, I'm not going to program clapping pull-ups, but it also helps with like rope climbs and stuff, which I
Yeah.
have programmed for you, as well as if you can't do rope climbs, you can do rope pull-ups, or
Yeah.
cow pull-ups, which are really tough. Not to mention pull-ups also tax your forearms and your grip, which again helps with. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have a lot of background noise from you.
Um,
Sorry.
no, you're right. Is that better at all?
Yeah, I can still hear whoever's talking back there. But anyway, we'll just talk about the pull-ups. And I want to know from you, JK, what's your favorite progression? If somebody doesn't have a pull-up, what's your progression of getting them one?
So, first of all, if they don't have a strict pull-up, you've got to strip it all back and go, all right, let's have a look at the biomechanics of getting a pull-up. And they might have to start doing such things as inverted rows, ring rows, so that you're actually using a little bit more stabilizing muscles with those rings, and then progressing to the actual movement by like pull-ups with bands, right? And actually getting familiar with the actual movement pattern of pulling yourself above the bar. But my first two regressions would be an inverted row and then a ring row. So that you're really trying to stabilizing those muscles, but also just using those lats and engaging those lats as much as possible.
Yeah, I actually really like those. That might be even a step up from where I start. I would usually tell people first, like, get into a high plank or push-up position, and I want you to learn how to retract your scapulas down so that you're engaging your lats in the push. It also helps with your triceps, and also hanging from the bar. I want you to just be able to hang from the bar and do a pull and then retract your scapulas down while you're hanging, right? So then you start the initial pull from a bar hang. And then absolutely also I do that same movement on the row, the ring row. So feet on the ground, knees bent, lay back, and the more advanced, get right underneath of it, or you can just keep stepping back. But you start that pull here where your arms are still straight, but you get that first initial start, and then you pull them in. Definitely ring row or inverted bar row, but start somewhere where they can learn how to engage and retract their scapulas, and then begin that pulling motion. And yes, ring rows I do as well once they're able to stabilize that. But push-ups, bar hangs, ring rows, those three things, love to start them there. People should definitely get high volume in that area. If you don't have a pull-up, start with those types of things. Build up maybe 3 sets of 10. Maybe try 3 sets of 30-second hangs from the bar with your shoulders retracted, which is called an active hang. Do that, build up. Once you can do that about twice a week for 2 weeks, we'll get into actually trying to pull, maybe adding bands for you to pull yourself up from that position.
Yeah, I've actually got active hangs today.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm about to do today.
We build the foundation. That's where you start from, active hangs, and you never stop.
That's exactly right. Yep. And that's actually a really good, message to, I think, end on. I've probably, and look, I probably have, on a good day, I could probably do 15 to 20 pull-ups unassisted. But today, I personally am still doing active hang work. You still have to work on the fundamentals of things such as posterior stabilizing. Just because I have a pull up doesn't mean I'm actually neglecting the fundamentals.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So,
all right. Well, thank you for talking with me today, JK. Glad we got a lot to go over. I hope everybody got a little bit out of today's topic. And if you don't have your first pull up and you want to tag us and you're getting your first pull up, if you follow this, let us know.
Please do. JK.hybrid coaching on Instagram.
And you can follow our team at the Hybrid Engine on Instagram. Also, just want to add in, we are now an official HYROX partner gym, the Hybrid Engine. So if you're in the USA, we have discount codes to races for you and stuff.
Congratulations, mate. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's fantastic.
All
right, guys. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one. Thank you for listening today, everybody. If you would like to be coached by James Kelly, visit him on Instagram at jk.hybridcoaching or look him up on the Fitter app. If you'd like to be coached by me, Anthony Parasini, or my wife, Lauren Weeks, visit The Hybrid Engine on Instagram as @TheHybridEngine, or you can visit me at @AWildParasini. You can also visit our website, thehybridengine.com. Additionally, you can find James Kelly as James Kelly and Georgie Vesley on YouTube, or you can find The Hybrid Engine on YouTube, or this podcast is available in video form also on YouTube as the Hybrid Coaching Podcast. Thank you again for listening, and we hope that you'll tune in next week for the next episode of the Hybrid Coaching Podcast.